Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is a special Christmas Eve edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're so very thankful that you have given us the gift of your presence, of your joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is New York Times best-selling author Raymond Arroyo. He is here to celebrate his absolutely beautiful picture book. It's called The Spider Who Saved Christmas. Before we invite Raymond into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Breaking Free, the beautiful picture book by our friend Becky Cummings. Bea the lion was born at the zoo. Her cage was all that she knew. She dreamed of what was beyond the bars. A lioness stays with her pride, but Bea chooses to be different. How will she break free? A messy accident gives Bea a good idea. All she needs is a little help from her feathered friends. Breaking Free is a first book in a new series that will make your kids laugh out loud and think. Bea is a sweet yet bold lioness. She challenges the way things are and follows her heart, even if that means going against what is considered normal. Bea teaches kids to question the world and to live with joy. Breaking Free by Becky Cummings. It's a great addition to any family library. Join us right now from the beautiful city of New Orleans. Our guest is a New York Times best-selling author. He's here today to celebrate his beautiful Christmas picture book. It's called The Spider Who Saved Christmas. Please welcome to the show, Raymond Arroyo. Hey, Raymond, how are you?
Hey, Jed, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm wonderful. What a beautiful book, The Spider Who Saved Christmas.
Well, it was an old legend, Jed, that I came across quite by accident. When I was traveling, I guess it was 20 years ago, through Eastern Europe, I noticed they had these trees, and they put a lot more tinsel on the trees than we do here. I mean, they cover them in tinsel. But on the boughs of the branches, they had little ornaments, spider ornaments, on these beautiful jeweled spider ornaments on the trees. And I didn't quite understand why they did that, but I saw it in businesses, at private homes, but I kind of let it go and didn't pay much attention to it. About 24 years later, I'm researching another book, and in the footnote of a Bible concordance, there's a little line that simply says, there is an ancient legend of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. On the flight to Egypt, they hide in a cave, and while there, a spider does them a particular service. That's all it said. So I tracked down the legend in some of the native tongues, in Hungarian, some other languages, had it translated, and then, it was still a pretty spare story. It really wasn't much more than what I just told you. So I expanded it a bit, added some characterization, built in a little tension that was already in the story, and revived this wonderful old story that, I love tales that inform us of things we take for granted or traditions and practices we continue to take part in or to extend. And tinsel, this story is the reason we decorate trees with tinsel. It is an homage to this spider and her web. I always thought it was to indicate icicles. I was wrong.
I was wrong too. I had no idea of this story. And one of the things that really I found moving about this story, I went to a Jesuit high school and had a pastor for many years who always encouraged me to visualize myself in the Bible stories instead of just hearing this story from the gospel that we hear over and over and over again. Right now I'm approaching 100, so I've heard them hundreds of times. To really kind of get yourself in there and visualize yourself and smell the smells and feel the temperature and feel the feeling. And I don't think we really ever think about that flight to Egypt that Joseph had
Right.
to protect Mary and Jesus on it. And
No, it's a little terrifying. I mean, people don't like to consider this part of, I call it the shadow of Christmas. There is a shadow over Christmas. And it is that the moment that worldly powers, in this case, Herod, discovered that there was a threat to his power and that he wasn't God, he felt compelled to, strike against anyone who might threaten that power. And the moment this Christ child comes, of course, he begins this campaign to exterminate him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of that in this story that is unique. And I think, it's not scary, but it provides, I think, the drama of the moment that I think was true and real for this family. And that I think we can all relate to, Jed. We're all on the run in some ways, particularly with COVID. We've been hiding in our caves, trying to protect our family all these years from sudden death. But if you have love, if you have the eyes of faith, there are miracles around you that you never expected. And sometimes they come in very unexpected and small ways. In this case, through the personage of this spider that they feared when they first entered the cave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the things that I think the story really highlights is the heroism of Joseph, of this simple, ordinary guy who is thrust into this role that he didn't ask for, but just, picks up the mantle and goes with it and just dedicates himself to protecting his wife and his child.
Well, you said it earlier, that when we should all, I think, any story you want to immerse yourself in. And the thing I love writing for younger audiences and for families is a child puts no distance between themselves and the story. They really fall into that story and they are that story. Adults tend to hold, a story at arm's length. So in researching this and kind of creating the creative space for me to tell the story, it did allow me to place myself there. And I've been to the Judean wilderness. I've been in some of those caves. I know this part of the world fairly well and, did a lot of research, obviously, on the historic moment. But we take this story for granted. It comes every year. People see their nativities and they go, oh, look, there it is. There's the mother and Joseph and the little baby, and there are a couple of sheep and wise men. That's nice. And they kind of move on with their lives. But it's actually very close to all of us. And I thought the drama of it, the moment of it, and the lesson here. The lesson is we're all here for a reason. Mm-hmm. And, Mary says that at one point in the story, and we see that played out in multiple ways. Not only her child, but this spider and her children. All are here for a reason. And you see in the way the story plays out the reality of that.
Yeah. I think that's such an important lesson for us to share with our kids, is that we are all here for a reason, and we all have something to contribute no matter where we are in our lives.
Well, we also are led to believe, and if you watch enough of these kind of animated specials or stop time specials during Christmas, one is led to believe that there's kind of a magic that infects the moment, and that no wrong can be done, and there's no danger or setbacks or obstacles. It's just everything's wonderful. I mean, the biggest obstacle that we're led to believe that the Holy Family faced was finding, an inn. Mm-hmm. Once they found an inn, everything was perfect. Wise men showed up and it was ideal. Well, that turns out not to be the case. And I think it's important to let our children know that you will meet obstacles. You will meet struggles. And here's how to meet them, the way these people did. And look, I've always thought, I can't remember where I read it, but it's so true. Stories are really, they're owner's manuals. They are keys for living and ways to live. And from the very earliest stories told around a campfire to the arcane ones written today, it really is every generation trying to pass what they've learned on to the next. But it's so they can live a safer and better life. And really, this story is a piece of that. Old stories they contain those wisdom, those nuggets of wisdom that we need go on. And I think there's something here, and it's frankly part of the reason, Jed, why this story has so caught on, and I think people have made it part of their Christmas traditions because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk a little bit, please, about story and how important it is for us as parents who want to pass on our faith to our kids, to use stories, to use that story time, that reading time together, to pass those lessons of faith on to our kids.
Well, not only faith. As I said, this story originally, Jed, when I first started writing it, it was a short story, a little chapter book. And I was halfway down that path, and I thought, who is the audience for this book? Which is the question I always ask. I never write for my own self-expression I've heard enough of me, and I don't need to write to, express myself. But I thought, who is the audience here? And it's families. It's multi-generations. And then I thought, well, what's the best way to get to them? And so they can share a story together. And it's in the form of a picture book. But, I push back often when people say, when did you start writing for children? Well, I don't really write for children. I write for families. I write for the young and the young at heart, because nothing gives me more joy as a parent, as a reader, than when I go back and read the books I enjoyed as a young person and share them with my own children. And the reason I love it so much is because you see these undercurrents and reflections and shades of character that you missed as a young person or you weren't ready to accept. And the story changes and shifts when you're older. Mm-hmm. And this is why I love children's literature. And so I wanted and do write that sort of book that will speak to you now as a child. There's a story in the foreground for the child to take in, but there's something also happening beneath the surface and in the background that only adults have access to. But I write that deliberately because I want those generations to share the experience together. That is the glory of that fictional journey. The time spent together, the shared experience. And as you said a moment ago, it furnishes parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles with an opportunity to share your values, mm-hmm. your collected knowledge, your wisdom with the next generation in a way you otherwise wouldn't. And you also are looking at it through the fresh eyes of a child, which always gives you new perspective and enjoyments and an angle on the story.
It certainly does. Becoming a dad changed my perspective on the world in a really wonderful way. And mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about, this picture book and sharing stories gives us a chance to not only share our faith, but share our values. And I think one of the things that we forget, and one reason it's so important to do this and spend time reading with our kids, is that there's so many other forces isn't quite the word I want, but there are so many other folks out there who want to share their values with our kids, and they do it with very powerful ways through movies and media and social media. And those might not be the values, video games, those might not be the values we want our kids to embrace.
Well, look, this is why I think we need more options, but, I write very deliberately to the audience today. I mean, there are times I wish I could take the time and belabor the descriptions and really tell that lush, deep, world, paint that world that a Tolkien had the time to paint. Frankly, the current generation and even adults don't have that kind of attention span, Jed. They just don't. Mm-hmm. They're not going to make that kind of commitment. It's very rare that they will. You want to immerse them in your world, but you have to get there quickly. And then you have to build in incentives. You have to keep the cliffhangers coming. And that's I learned that, frankly, from my boys. My boys, we play video games together. And I thought, why do they keep coming back to the well here? It's not the game. The game is repetitive. What is it? It's the story woven around the game. The story, now these are very complex. These are like movies, these things. And you have to work through a level to get to the next, to relieve and answer the next cliffhanger or the previous cliffhanger. So it really is very methodically created. And I've used that in my fiction, my Will Wilder series, which is a middle grade series for Random House. my readers tell me they read those books in a day or two. These are 300-page books. But they're burning through them because they are sort of propulsive and built that way. There are multiple cliffhangers per chapter. There's a big cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, and then it throws you, you have to go on. You want to go on to find out what happens. That's the same motivator that drives boys through video games. They want to know what happens. They want to achieve the thing so they can be victorious, so they can vanquish the evil, beat the bad guy, clear the town, whatever it is, build the castle, whatever they have to achieve. There's a goal. And I think fiction and the writer today has to have the same approach. You cannot take for granted that an audience is going to read your book. There's too many challenges out there. So even The Spider Who Saved Christmas, I wrote it in a way, and we designed the layouts and the spreads, which are kind of vibrant. The colors are very vibrant, and there's a lot of drama in the design. There are also a few Easter eggs, which I can share with you too, if you want.
Sure.
That we've laid, you kind of weave in. It just lends an element of mystery, an element of surprise. People know that it's more than just what's on the surface. And I've always loved books like that, and I think audiences appreciate that.
Yeah, you just offered to share with us an Easter egg. I don't want you to share them all, but why don't I take you up on that offer?
If you go to the middle of the spread, in the middle of the book, there is an image of the spider looking down at the Christ child sleeping. And she's kind of on her web, and you see the baby's head in the background. It's a very sweet baby's head, which we took a lot of time designing that spread because it was, hard. First of all, how do you make a spider lovable, which is hard visually. But and I think we almost got there. Not quite, but we're almost there. What I love about it, in my research, I discovered spiders communicate in the most fascinating way. They have no ears, so they communicate through vibrations. They actually have a little, they're not really legs, but little, feelers in the back that they place on the web. And with that, they can pluck and receive vibrations. That's how they communicate. So I have my spider plucking on her web in that spread with the Christ child in the background. Well, she's calling her children out to help her do a particular service that I mentioned earlier to the Christ child. I won't ruin it for you, but when she's plucking on the web, most people don't realize, though I've had a few children ask me about it, we put a musical staff on the web, and the notes actually spell out what child is this. It's Greensleeves. It's the open of Greensleeves. In that little note, there's a note progression of Greensleeves there. It's very subtle, but and it's kind of woven into the web, so you will not see it. You really have to go looking for it. But I love those little secrets. I mean, you almost put those in for you. You put them in for, posterity. It's like making film. I'm a television guy. I'm a visual, person, a creator. So I'm used to using those images to tell other stories. So I wanted the book to have that element as well.
What a great challenge for folks to go out and find that. I'm looking for it right now, but I will find it by the end.
It's a purple background with the big baby head on the upper right hand spread.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other images in the book that I just love is that the image of the Holy Family sleeping together. I don't think we ever kind of see that. I don't think we ever take the time to see the Holy Family as a family.
Right. Well, and my dear friend Anne Rice, who just recently died, Anne wrote a beautiful review of the book when it came out last year, and her big takeaway was, thank you for restoring to us a vibrant father figure in St. Joseph, because the St. Joseph depicted here is not the kind of decrepit old guy in the corner holding a lily. I mean, he's an engaged father. And he's protecting his family. He's worried for his family. He's an active participant, which I wanted. And I also love that, Mary also has enormous strength in her subtle way, acting in such concert with her child, almost communicating with the spider, hearing things others don't hear. So there were lots of little notes and things I came to understand by just really doing a lot of research and sitting in this story for a while. That you can weave in visually and otherwise that other mediums would deprive you.
Yeah. You know, we have a lot of authors that listen to the show, and one of the things I love about this story is that you discovered it by being respectful of other traditions in our faith. And how are you able to kind of be open to those other ideas and stories to catch those?
Well, I don't write this book, and this book is, you know, I did not write this for a Christian or Catholic audience. Mm-hmm. I wrote this for you know, a secular audience, everybody who loves Christmas, who wants to know a little more about it, for children. I really write firstly for the delight of my audience and to entertain and draw in the audience and hopefully get them to understand something about humanity and the reality at play here. I mean, here you're dealing with such well-known characters, if you will, that we take for granted. But I have to say, I didn't start by approaching them as kind of holy saints and, you know, mm-hmm. these sanctified figures that I had to build up. I went at them, as you said, as people, as a family in great distress, because that's where we can meet them most readily, in that human experience. I mean, if someone told you tomorrow in a dream, get your wife, get your child, get out of town, do it now. Well, I don't know how many people would pack up the car and run. Mm-hmm. This guy did. And then you suddenly hear the screams in the background as you're running out of town because they're wiping out all of the newborn children. I mean, that's kind of terrifying. And I thought, why haven't we ever thought about that part of the story? And this story, you know, it had to be the backdrop because that's the reason they're running out to the wilderness and hiding in a cave in the first place, mm-hmm. which is where they meet the spider, who's the center of my tale. And I also loved the on-ramp of the spider as a new way into the nativity story. Mm-hmm. And as you said, the warmth of that family, the terror of that family, the faith of that family. Mm-hmm. So you find the faith through all the human pain, suffering, terror, tragedy that we're all going through in our daily life. But I don't start with that. Mm-hmm. You know, that sort of fell out as I was writing the story. When you nail down, for me anyway, when you nail down the facts, the reality of the place, the people, the situation, then you find everything else. It will almost tell itself. You know, I was trained as an actor by a woman named Stella Adler. Stella was sort of the grande dame of American acting, one of the apostles of the group theater. She and Lee Strasberg created, you know, method acting, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. But really, she kind of rejected Lee Strasberg's ideas. Anyway, Stella trained people like Marlon Brando and John Ritter and Frank Langella. So when I work, I still work that way. I work, you know, I build the character out. I spend a lot of time on those characters. You try to get in their skin and in their heads and then you build out the world around them and the reality of that world, which is exactly as I worked when I was in the theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any stories that you've discovered that you're looking to bring to us through a picture book in the future?
Yes, I am, even now working on another series. I'm not ready to announce it yet because it's still in its nascent form. And I have another picture book that's almost a prequel to this spider book, which is coming out next Christmas. And it too is a picture book. And it, tells a slightly different, it's a different take with different people. But it does surround the Christmas story.
Wonderful. Well, we, want to give you an open invitation to return to let us know about those books when they're ready. In the meantime, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about the spider who saved Christmas and find out more about you.
Well, they can go to Amazon.com. They can go to Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore. Amazon has been great about, keeping a lot of stock this Christmas. They burned through so much of it. In Barnes & Noble, I did a series of signings at a lot of Barnes & Noble all over the country. And they've just been great partners throughout. So either of those, retailers or wherever you find your books. I mean, I always encourage people to support your local independent bookseller. It's critical. These people are the heart of a community, and it's important that we support them as much as we can.
Absolutely. And if you can't find the book on the shelf at the minute you walk into the store, just ask the friendly bookseller if they can order it. They'll have it there for you in just a matter of days.
You bet.
Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Spider Who Saved Christmas, Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, thank you so much for being with us. Have a very, very merry and blessed Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for having me on, to all your listeners and viewers, and I look forward to coming back.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We have a special Christmas Day episode of the show. Members of CatholicTeenAuthors.com are coming together. They've created an original short story. They're going to get together to read it for us tomorrow. I'm so excited. It's called Fowl Christmas, F-O-W-L, A Fowl Christmas. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to help you celebrate the book. That's one of the great things about this podcast. The holidays is a great time to celebrate, but here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, we are celebrating great kids' books every single day, and we would love to help celebrate your book. There's so many ways that we can help you tell the world about your book. You can be a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost you a thing, and it gives you the opportunity to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. You can also enter your book to be a certified great read. If our panel believes that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. Oh, and have you heard about our monthly promotion program? This is a fantastic opportunity to let the world know about your book through commercials on the podcast, through messages to our 62,000 plus social media followers, and to have your book displayed on our national network of digital pedestrian billboards. You can learn all about it by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the author's Click Here button and scroll on down to see our different services. I want to thank the folks who made today's Christmas Eve edition of the show so special. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Raymond Arroyo. Please be sure to check out The Spider Who Saved Christmas. Also want to thank our sponsor, Bia the Lion, Breaking Free, the great new series from our friend Becky Cummins. I also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.